So 30 years ago, teaching as a job, teaching as a profession was a highly respected, revered position. Is it the same today? I'll tell you why. Because there's so many other cooler jobs that look cooler than 30 years ago, right? 30 years ago, there were few visible jobs, or doctor, lawyer, something like that. And a teacher. And teacher had incredible amount of respect, reverence. Everyone knew she's a teacher. And, it was huge. Is that the same today?
It depends on the teacher. You command your respect. You lose your respect. I think 30 years ago also there were teachers who kids would not respect. Today also you will find that. Today also you will find classes where students will wait for teacher XYZ to enter the class. Because they respect what he or she is doing. I think it all depends on us. So you know your children, you know what is necessary for them, you know how to give it to them. You're aware of their interests, their aspirations. You let that match with the learning that's going on. I guess you will get all the respect that you will get the respect that you deserve. Let's put it that way.
Welcome to Will Talks. Today we have an absolutely exciting guest with us. Ma'am, her name is Dr. Cynthia Dcosta. Dr. Cynthia has been a phenomenal teacher for over 9 years. She's been teaching science, and I was one of her students. After being a teacher, she's moved into Pushpanjali College of Teacher Education, and she spent 27 years as a teacher educator. 27 years. There's so much we're going to learn from this conversation today about education, about teachers, about what India is facing with its new NEP, about the expectations that schools have. And I just absolutely can't wait to deep dive and jump into this conversation. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Cynthia.
My pleasure, Willie.
How are you feeling about this whole experience about our podcast? Is there anything that comes to your mind?
I'm looking forward to this podcast. Well, my first experience, while I have shot a number of videos, a podcast is slightly different, I think. So anyway, we straight away dive into it.
That's amazing. Tell me, is there some experiences that you remember as a teacher?
Plenty.
Really?
Plenty of experiences. In fact, whatever I've learned has been from my students. To tell you about my teaching journey, yes, you said that I started with 9 years at St. Augustine's and all that. But let me tell you, when I was just 15, I began giving tuitions on a one-to-one basis. So if you count that as my informal experience in teaching, that was one experience that taught me much. Because I saw kids struggle with simple spellings, simple calculations, etc. And that experience is what I took when I went to school teaching. And what I learned during my journey as a school teacher, I next took it to my journey as a teacher educator. So you see, from a tuition teacher to a school teacher to a teacher educator. And each time I took something from my previous experience. So that's one thing that I would like to state here. Another thing is what I learned from students. Things that books never teach you. Things that courses in teacher education never taught me. What is it like to have empathy? What is it like to look out for the lost kid in class? So all these have been great experiences as teachers. Right.
I mean, when you tell me about at the age of 15 to teach another child who probably is 7, 8 or 9, the difference between you and the student would have been quite less. What was that experience like? What were your fears and how did you manage really? Because it required so much courage and bravery and confidence.
Really more than courage and bravery at that stage, it was necessity. Because I needed the money. So I got into teaching or giving tuitions because I needed the money. But then the confidence that parents and kids had in me, that made a lot of difference. And, I taught right from KG class to class 10. So when you talk of these stages of childhood and stages of development, I could see it unfold before me. So before I actually read something like Piaget's theory or something like that from the books, I'd seen all this happen. So that was one great thing that the kids had a lot of confidence in me. Their parents had a lot of confidence in me. And yeah, as you say, the age gap wasn't much. Not even 7 or 8 years. I think some of my students were 2 years younger than me. And that's why I could vibe very well. So if
So a teacher who reaches is the teacher that teaches, right?
absolutely, absolutely. If you look at their struggle from their eyes, that makes a big difference.
And we, as parents, I think just assume that it's happening in all schools, in all classrooms, in all periods, all the time.
Maybe, but that doesn't. And even that teacher has to remember that if you do not understand the child, then there's no point teaching content. You may have the best of pedagogy, you may have the best of content to teach, you may have the best of teaching methods. But if you do not understand the child, then teaching never happens.
So after all these years of teacher education and looking at how teacher education content and curriculum and syllabus is designed, I think you have only more belief in that amazing work that developmental psychologists have done, right?
Correct.
Because they were observing kids, and in a day and age where there was no technology. I mean, just thinking about how with that scientific temper, no, for them to observe kids and then to write down. You look at Maria Montessori or Jean Piaget or Vygotsky, the way they've created these models. It's just amazing. What do you think about that? Sometimes when we
I don't know if they needed technology for that. How will technology, okay, maybe when you're observing something with CCTV cameras and all today, that might be a different kind of observation. But they observed without all that, and I think they did a great job. They observed, they documented things. Data was not fed into any computer by them.
yeah.
It was all analyzed here. So great job done by people like Maria Montessori or even Rousseau with his study of Emile and his wonderful book that he came up with, or Piaget's studies, etc. These were all based on their experiences, and that's what teacher education needs today. You don't need a model that's handed over to you by somebody who did his studies 50 years ago. Are we observing us students in class today? Every teacher ought to remember this. And are we trying to create a pedagogy that's suited to the learners of today?
So you're saying, as teachers, something as natural or rather obvious as observing a class, you think observing a child may not be done? And
You're right.
if it has to be done, how do you do? How does a teacher listening to us today maybe think of how can she better observe a child?
A teacher, first of all, has to be a reflector. So if you're a reflective practitioner, let me use this combination. You're watching the kids. It's not just content that you're teaching. You're watching every child because every child will absorb that content in a different way. So either you go home and document, you look out for their difficulties, try something new the next time you enter class, and this may have to be customized. Something may work for A and may not work for student B. So if a teacher is a reflective practitioner, that's what's going to help change the kind of interaction that we are having in the classrooms today.
And reflection is a very high order thing, is it?
All of us reflect, don't we? When you use something, when you are doing something, don't we reflect over our experience? If we don't, then there's something amiss.
So we want to make sure that our kids are also thinking and reflecting. Or is reflection a cognitive ability only for adults?
No. Even our students need to reflect. I don't know how early that can start, but yes, reflection will help them learn. Reflection will help them connect. Reflecting about how they are learning will help them become better learners. Reflecting around experiences around them will help them become learners. I'll give you an example here, right? So we were talking about metals expanding on heating. That's something we all learn it. Ratta maar ke.
This is a train track example.
Correct.
Train.
So we all learn it we just mug it up. Now, my daughter was in class 6 and she came home saying, Mummy, every morning when I leave for school and I open our iron gate, it opens so easily. But in the evening when I'm back, or in the afternoon when I'm back from school, I have to push that iron gate. So I asked her, Priya, why? And she said, we had something like this. So this is what, imagine these are the iron gates. She says, Mummy, in the morning, those gates are not sticking to one another and they're quite cold. But in the afternoon, when I'm back from school, they're pretty hot and they're sticking to each other. And then it struck me, what was that? Nothing but metals expanding on heating. Observation and reflection. If a kid can learn, and the kids, you don't have to train them. It's so natural. So if a child can pick up these two things, observe, reflect, and maybe then act, I think that's a great thing.
So this looks very helpful for parents as well, right? Because in a classroom or in a school setting, we don't see timetables which says now it's a reflection period, now it's an observation, or children are not tested on reflection and observation.
Correct.
They're tested on content, memory, reproducing what they learned. What would parents need to know? Suppose there are these 5 things or 3 things that a parent should know about how children learn. How do you think we can talk to parents on that? Like, one is reflection and
first thing, allow your children to observe. So you expose them to a lot of experiences, and those experiences could be from anywhere. They could be something in the market, or as you're reaching them up to the bus stop. Or books are a wonderful thing to set students into reflection mode. Again, I'm quoting examples from my child. The reason for that is, as much as I learned from teacher education colleges, I've learned from observing my child and observing kids in school. So she was very fond of reading. And when she was small, when she was little, I had to read to her. So I would read a story, but I would not complete the story.
Okay.
I would stop midway and say, now Priya, you continue. And I would get some amazing answers. For example, we were reading Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. And there was this picture of Snow White there, sleeping on the bed, very uncomfortable because she was sleeping on the dwarf's bed. So I said, what if you were left in a forest like this? What would you have done? So she looked at the picture and she said, Mama, these 2 beds, I would have joined them together and then slept.
Oh.
Now, that is an example of problem solving, decision making. And I was amused. Like, I just asked her that question and I said, hey, this is a great thing now to introduce problem solving skills or to introduce decision making skills. So for every story, I continued that. So my advice to parents would be, read, but don't complete the story. Let them complete the story in their own way. Have such sessions. What would you have done if you were in this case?
Scenarios, right?
Have
Giving
scenarios.
children scenarios.
Have scenarios.
It's amazing. It's almost like telling parents, hey, your work is not done just sending your child to school.
Absolutely not.
It probably starts, that's your starting point. And then, so have you seen a difference in children in the same school, in the same class? Of course, all children are different. Why do you think, what environmental factors do you think have come into play in terms of family backgrounds?
There are 3 things that would make your child successful. First, the child himself or herself, the inputs that the school or the teachers give, and the inputs that the parents give. And if I'll quote one example, I can't resist.
Please.
Your own family. No, really, I sincerely, I give this example at several talks. I remember your dad, and I remember the interest that he took in your education. As I told you, you were one kid in those days who had the entire childcraft set. And that's why when we taught you in school, and I'm not putting you on because this is a podcast that you and I are doing.
I understand.
But these are certain things, they strike, they remain with you. And when I was your teacher in 1990, so this is how, 32 years ago.
Yeah.
And you knew a lot more than other kids in the class because you were exposed to that kind of an atmosphere at home. So it is, as much as the school contributes, parents do contribute. And we find that difference in the class. The kind of culture that you have at home, combined with the kind of ethos that you have in a school. Both these can take your kid to the levels that they need to reach.
I understand because it's so similar to something that my friend was telling me last week. He said children fail academically mostly because of non-academic factors.
Absolutely true. Correct.
And these non-academic factors are all these things, right? These
Right.
environment.
The support you get from home, the kind of motivation that's given to you both.
And it's not got to do with, I think, I just feel it's not got to do with how much money the family has. I'll
Not
tell
at
you,
all.
no, right?
Not at all.
It's a misnomer. Uske paas paisa zyada hai,
Absolutely.
to phir, you know,
Absolutely.
Absolutely, right? Because I remember my friend, I'm going to give his name. His name is Samir Gowde. And he was my friend in 11th standard. And he transformed my life. The reason he did that is because he came from very humble backgrounds, lived in a 250 square feet house. And he just had this incredible desire to do well. And what I learned from him was strategies, systems, system thinking, data tracking, because he knew that, 75% is the attendance. He had a little book. He would write how many days he was absent. He said, I can actually bunk this next lecture because I will be at 76.3. And I'm like, why are you writing that down? He's like, no, in case I get caught, I need evidence.
Right.
And at 11th standard, he was telling me all this. And both his parents were not like highly qualified or educated in that matter. But he said that my parents really hoped that I will do well. It's got nothing to do with money.
Correct.
It's just, it's something else. As a parent yourself, what do you think? How do we show that love, that care, and how do we set, let's say, high expectations for our children without stressing them out? Because some amount of stress is important. Eustress, it's called eustress,
Absolutely.
right? Some amount of stress is important. How do we
Correct.
set high expectations? Because I've seen parents who either say, हाँ वो कुछ भी करेगा तो चलेगा, and some parents are just like, I want you to do this. What's the middle ground? Is there anything that?
I think one thing is first accept your children. You should be aware of what their own capacities are. Okay. Secondly, have good role models around them. If you could speak to them about others. I'm not saying that you should set that competition kind of spirit in the house, but they should be aware of people around them who have excelled, who have done well. So they should have some kind of a role model. There will be failures. There will be times they are not doing up to the mark. You're there to encourage them. That's them. Give them a feel of what kind of a world they'll be stepping into, say 10 to 12 years later. Maybe this sounds like a cliche, but you cannot teach your children the way you taught them yesterday, because then you're robbing them of their tomorrow.
Yeah.
So if I could just twist that a bit, you can't apply the same standards that were applied to you or the same standards that we applied 5 years ago, because their world of tomorrow is going to be very different. So parents should be aware. What is this world of tomorrow? What are the expectations there? Don't force your children to, the world of tomorrow is going to be like this, and so you have to get all these grades and all now. No. But at least make them aware.
It's so true. So are you seeing, like, I always believed that the teachers I had were amazing. Because when I think back at my own education, I look at the teachers and I'm like, my goodness, like Brother Judge, there were so many, the way they taught us, so much was based on character building. So much was soft.
Correct.
So much was soft. Not the hard stuff, like soft. I remember Brother Judge would just look at me, and that's the way he would discipline me. Just look at me and he'd be like, and that was enough. That knocked me out for 4 days. It'd really get me to reflect and think through. And that made a huge difference. What are the kind of people becoming teachers today? What are the kind of students are you seeing coming into, all kinds of colleges or entering into this profession? Why are they coming? What are their driving forces? What are their big whys? What are their purpose?
I see a big difference. I joined the Teacher Education College in 1996. This is my 27th year as a teacher educator.
Wow.
There is a difference. We did have more committed people maybe in the past. I wouldn't say they are less committed now. They are committed. They are more aware of choices, etc. No doubt about that. There are few who say, oh, I want a cushy job, where I just go for a few hours. So whether it was we had those kind of people even in the past, where people would come for, okay, this is a half-day job. Fair enough. It may be a job that is, say, a 5-hour or 6-hour school job, but then at least 2 to 3 hours you're working at home, preparing for your next day. So that's one thing that those who come into this field have to remember. That's one thing. A second thing that they have to remember is people who came to become teachers, say, 30 years ago, it was less challenging because the kids in school, whatever you told them, they would accept. You walk into a class today, perhaps they know everything that you are going to teach them. They're way ahead of you, the kids. They've got it all from YouTube and whatever. So are you 2 steps ahead of them where your content is there, where your content is concerned? Or if the kid has a doubt, are you ready to solve those doubts? And I don't say this is difficult. Thanks to Google, you can get your answer in 2 minutes. So there is a difference between the kind of students we taught 30 years ago and the kind of students you're going to teach today. And that
So because of that difference, by default, there's a difference in the kind of teacher.
has to be a difference
Suddenly,
in the kind of
because
teacher.
your student has changed.
This is challenging.
Expectation
It
has
is
changed.
very challenging.
So it's even more difficult now to be a teacher than earlier.
And it's equally difficult for us to be teacher educators because we have to create those kind of teachers.
Even more few steps. I was talking to Joy last week. She's a head of school in the UK. And I was telling her, hey, Joy, so what's the big difference between, because you've been working here for 15 years and now there. She's like, I just feel like the kids in the UK, they don't seem to care. I'm like, what are you saying? Like, yeah, they just, oh, you want me to be kind? Okay, I'll do this kind thing because you want me to do. And she's like, the one thing that Indian teachers have even today compared to the UK is by default, you get respect. By default, teachers are getting respect and compliance and obedience, And I'm slowly seeing that is also reducing because some corporal punishment and there's so many other things have gone. And I feel suddenly a lot of teachers now don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle, motivate or inspire better behavior without being a little bit of a, strong force in the classroom. Is there any thoughts around that, do you think?
I think if you're a good teacher, if your content is strong, and very important, if a teacher is a good learner, you keep learning. There'll be challenges. The challenges will come more rapidly today than they did come 20 years ago. But if you are a good learner and if you are updated, if you are giving students something interesting, I don't think that should be a problem. Like, I don't think a child in class is there to be naughty or to give you trouble. The child is probably giving you trouble because you're not giving him anything, so he gives you trouble in return. So how ready are you with something new, with something interesting? That makes a big difference. Give a focus to the children.
So as teachers then, what's happening today is they're dealing with a very different set of children.
Correct.
Right? And in one of the classrooms that I was observing, I heard this teacher say this amazing thing. A child asked a question to this teacher. And this teacher turns around, looks at the whole class and says, you got to ask me a question that Google cannot answer.
Beautiful.
For everything else, you go Google it. Right? So don't ask me these questions. And it forced children in the class suddenly to think.
And to think differently.
To think differently. And to think about morality and empathy and decision making. Because Google's not going to tell you that. Right?
Correct.
I mean, unless it's Google.ai or something. But, because eventually you got to take that decision on your own. And that was an eye-opening moment for me. Right? Ask me questions that Google cannot answer. I think that just kind of slowly takes us to the next bit that I'm thinking about with this NEP, with the new national education policy. There's so much talk going around it. And everyone's saying that this is like perhaps one of the most forward-looking policy document that India has ever produced, maybe after the Kothari Commission in 1964. So what do you think, what are the implications for teacher education institutes or what does the new teaching job look like after this comes into existence?
first of all, where teacher education is concerned, the NEP recommends that it should be a 4-year course, unlike the 2-year course that we are having now. So it's recommended that after 2030, all teacher education courses will be 4-year courses.
After 12th or after graduation?
After 12th standard.
Okay.
After class 12. So you will get a dual degree. It will be like a BA, B.Ed. Okay. That's where the kind of teacher education courses. So obviously there's going to be a change in the way teacher education is going to be. It's going to be more interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. There'll be focus on many new areas like artificial intelligence, data sciences, coding, etc. Also, there will be a lot of emphasis on, let's say, our Indian basic traditional knowledge and things like that. So, teacher education is going to change. What is the exact change? Only 2030 will tell us. But teachers have to remember that the kind of pedagogy that you're going to use in class will also need to change. Personally, I feel NEP 2020, where the pedagogy is concerned, is a beautiful document because it looks at inclusivity within the classroom. It looks at many things, all your 21st century learning skills that you need, like communication, creativity, critical thinking. All these are emphasized. So teachers will have to be very alert. The evaluation system is something that's not going to be just rote learning. We are expecting new subjects coming in. We are expecting bagless days. So what are you going to do on those bagless days? Obviously, they're going to be learning a lot.
Yes.
They're going to be learning a lot.
That is the only day you're going to be learning.
That's a good one. That's a good one. So you will require a teacher who's constantly thinking. Again, I come to that point of more of a reflective practitioner. So I really hope...
this is not a place for people to come and say, oh, I want a cushy job. Because it's not a cushy job.
It will be a cushy job if you're going to enjoy it.
It will be a cushy job, happy job.
Happy job, yeah. If you're going to enjoy what you are doing. That's why a teacher has to be a constant learner.
Yeah.
You can't teach yesterday like the way today the way you have taught yesterday. Not at all.
So 30 years ago, teaching as a job, teaching as a profession was a highly respected, revered position. Is it the same today? I'll tell you why. Because there's so many other cooler jobs that look cooler than 30 years ago, right? 30 years ago, there were few visible jobs, or doctor, lawyer, something like that. And a teacher. And teacher had incredible amount of respect, reverence. Everyone knew she's a teacher. And, it was huge. Is that the same today?
It depends on the teacher. You command your respect. You lose your respect. I think 30 years ago also there were teachers who kids would not respect. Today also you will find that. Today also you will find classes where students will wait for teacher XYZ to enter the class. Because they respect what he or she is doing. I think it all depends on us. So you know your children, you know what is necessary for them, you know how to give it to them. You're aware of their interests, their aspirations. You let that match with the learning that's going on. I guess you will get all the respect that you will get the respect that you deserve. Let's put it that way.
That's amazing. So when you look at training a teacher, I say, here is a person, and now this person is with you for the next 1 year or two. Is the B.Ed course 2 years today?
2 years.
So here 2 years. I don't know what 2 years is. Maybe 400 instructional days?
No. 180 plus 180. 360.
Okay, 360
roughly,
instructional days and 7 hours a day?
6.
6 hours a day. So we're talking 2,000, 3,000 hour curriculum and content. How is that designed? How is that packaged? Can you unbundle that for us?
Okay.
Like what do you learn in that?
Right now you have something called core courses, which includes things like your basic philosophy, your psychology, your sociology, and subjects like that. Then you have what you call as project-based courses. So that would mean actual hours in the classroom where they are teaching students, then maybe some amount of community work and so on. They also have interdisciplinary courses, right? So things like, say, gender, school and society. That's an interdisciplinary course. Or inclusive education. So they have courses like that. They have certain elective courses, like the pedagogy subject that they are going to teach. So that would be specialized, like, say, English and history or math and science, such kind of courses. They also have something called as ability courses. So they have 2 such ability courses in their 2-year course. One is to do with ICT in teaching. So it's not the theory that we concentrate on, but all the practical aspects of information and communication technology. So you have courses like that. You have an entire course reading and reflecting over texts, which is a beautiful one. And irrespective of whether you come from the science background or the arts, humanities background, you have got to do this course. So there is a very good choice of the curriculum right now is beautifully designed.
It doesn't look like anything that I went through. When I was
Not
in grade,
at
I
all.
had six
Not at all.
subjects.
Right.
Sociology,
Right.
I think philosophy of teaching,
Correct.
or,
Correct.
and ICT, and I think the method.
Right,
You select
pedagogy.
geography, and how do you teach geography?
Right.
Or, just 4 or 6 subjects, I think we had.
There's a wide array of courses that you can choose
This sounds
from.
great.
Yes. It sounds great if it is executed in a great manner.
Great. Yeah.
If once again you reduce it to just lectures and marks, then it won't serve any purpose. So teacher education, other than this, it depends upon your own individual college. Like though it's not compulsory for us, we have something called as value-added courses. So in the past 2 years, our college did 3 value-added courses for the batch. One was on e-content development. Another one was on apps in education. And the third one was on barefoot counseling.
Oh.
Now, this has got nothing to do with what the
The
university
curriculum.
has. Yeah.
Nothing to do. So I want to ask you here now, what is a teacher trained to do once she goes into this curriculum? These are the 5 hard skills that a teacher can definitely do.
One thing is, of course, the teaching learning, right? You're meant to go to school. Evaluation. And evaluation not just in terms of written evaluation, but oral evaluation or maybe practical skills, etc. So that's another very important skill. A third skill is all kinds of organization, co-curricular activities, or you have a department that's assigned to you. You're in charge of the dance department or the debate, so you should be able to organize, etc. there. Then another thing would be, I wouldn't say counseling as such, but maybe counseling at a lower level, right? Not where you require extraordinary skills. You leave that to a qualified counselor. But guiding students, mentoring students. Mentoring would be a very, very important skill for teachers of today.
So if this is what teachers are absolutely trained for in the new B.Ed course, what are those skills that they are absolutely not trained for in this through this course, and that they have to learn over and above so that they can support the changing nature of children and needs?
One thing that they should know, we try to train them for that, but I don't know how much. Learning to learn. I'll sum it. Learning to learn. Because
okay,
you
we
don't
need
know.
to unbundle this a lot.
Correct. Because you don't know what you have to learn. I'll spell out, okay, you need skill A, B, C. Tomorrow when you go to the classroom, it is skill D, E, F that you need. So you learn to learn. Whatever it may be. When I did my B.Ed in 1992, technology was what? Nothing. One television or something like that. But I learned to learn. One television, educational television.
Yeah, BPL,
Whatever.
Doordarshan.
And you had those 2 hours of Shaleya Chitravani or something. That was it. But once I got into teaching and once I got into teacher education, I realized what potential you can have because of the internet and because of the kind of technology tools that are offered to you today. If I didn't know to learn, then I would be missing a lot today. So
And there are
just one
people-
skill. You learn to learn.
You've met people around you, other teachers and professors, who have struggled with learning to learn?
Yes. It all depends on whether you have a block there. I'm not going to learn. Or people like, hey, I'm ready to learn anything.
People think that learning will happen naturally, by the way.
Yes.
A lot of people are saying, itna experience hai to main automatically seekh jaunga. I think that's a fallacy. Until you
No,
really...
you can't.
You're
have to immerse yourself.
right?
Yes,
You
yes.
have to be very conscious about learning to learn. Which means that parents who just automatically assume trained teacher hai, that's...
No. No.
There's no concept like that.
There's no concept like that. There can be a trained teacher who has taught for 20 years and is not half as effective as a teacher who is not trained but is using her own intelligence to deal with situations. And I mean, I have seen people without training, formal training, and doing a wonderful job.
Yeah. So if the B.Ed course itself has changed today, then why school timetables are not changing? Because if the school is still allocating time the same way they were allocating time 30 years ago, 15 periods of English, 45-minute ka period hoga, 50 kids will be there in a class or 45 kids will be there in the class, then how much of that will translate?
No, Willie, that will not change because that comes from the board that you have to have so many classes. But a good teacher can change it. I'll give you an example. In Augustine's,
This is a great, what you're going to say next is going to be amazing for people who think system hi kharab hai. So people who think system hi kharab hai and who feel like they don't have any agency to change, this is going to be the message for them.
you see, system to hai, wo system nahi badlegi. You will have English and history and geography and that timetable and all will be there. What you do during that English period is up to you, no? So we had this teacher in St. Augustine's. She was teaching the primary and this was her routine every day. The last 5 minutes of the lecture, she would tell one kid, go to the window. What can you see outside? You're going to tell your entire class. So that kid would look out and he'd say, I can see PT period going on and I can see the boys are playing. I can see the grass is being mowed and such kind of things. And the rest were listening to him. So he was learning speaking skills, the entire class listening skills. And this was being done every day. Don't forget, he's getting confidence in speaking, right? Now, do you need a separate period for this? The teacher in one division was doing this, the teacher in the other division wasn't doing this. It was the teacher's ingenuity. So it's up to you as a teacher what you do. You will have that English period, history period and all that. But how to infuse critical thinking, how to infuse communication, creativity within those 30 minutes is up to you as a teacher.
Which means as a school leader, you have to, like, when I reflect about it, it's not one school. It's probably 30 different little schools inside the class, inside the school.
Right.
Each class has a different climate. Each class has a different culture. I remember when I would get into like division A versus division B, suddenly I would feel कुछ तो अलग है यहाँ पे. I don't know what it is, right?
और अलग किसकी वजह से हो रहा है? The magician standing there. The teacher is the magician. Just as a magician can keep you like this at the edge of your seat. अभी आगे क्या होने वाला है? That's the teacher's job.
And so, when you think about it, as a school leader, I have to ensure that
Everybody is a magician.
Everybody is a magician. Like, can you discover who's that magician and can you make that standard norm around the school, across the school, through the school, over the school, under the school, everywhere, right? That is something because all children deserve
The
excellent.
best of education.
Yeah. All children deserve that.
So your principal or the school leader, they should not be burdened with, just signing documents and all that. I know
Administrative functions.
that's part of it, no doubt. No doubt. But looking out for, like again, I'm coming back to St. Augustine's, but I remember the brothers, when they would walk through the corridors, they were listening to the way we taught. And for 4 years, I taught as an untrained teacher, okay? And my English was very average then. And then after the lecture, I remember Brother Danaho, Miss, you were pronouncing that word this way, but it should be, it should be pronounced. My V's and my W's.
Oh, bite your V.
Bite your
kiss
lower
your
lip
lips
for,
W.
yes.
I
Now,
remember.
Yes. Now, I did not know about this. The brothers would tell us the the's and the thees and when to use a the and when to use a the.
I before E before I, when you spell things. And
So we were corrected. And I'm glad we were corrected. I was corrected as a teacher, as a young teacher.
how do people feel when they're corrected today? Are you feeling there's something different in the social fabric today?
It depends how you give that correction.
Are people being more...
Nobody is touchy about it. It's how that correction is given. I always have one rule there. Praise in public, reprimand in private. So even when I'm writing their remarks on their evaluation sheet, I try to put only the positive things there and the negative things, I call them aside and I tell them. Nobody likes to see it written so much in black and white. You have to correct them when they are wrong. You have to tell them. But the way you give that correction to them, without making them feel small. That will make a big difference.
So in today's times, I sometimes feel people are not open to giving corrections also.
In the right way. Give
Because they
corrections in
feel
the right
like,
way.
who am I to correct them? They will learn on their own. All millennials, Gen Z, everyone has a right to their opinion. What is right? All these things. And sometimes we also feel like if I correct them, they'll feel bad. Because being able to correct someone, while it's our
Your duty.
yes, thank God. Yeah, it's our duty. Schools are about correction because kids are coming in and we are correcting them. I mean, because they're being kids.
Teachers have to be corrected by
have to.
somebody. It could be a senior teacher, it could be the principal. You could use one strategy here. I don't know, I've not used it for long, but carefronting.
What's that?
You're confronting the person with care. So you have an understanding, and I go to you. Willie, I observed this. Do you mind if I carefront you? And you explain what carefronting is. So the person is open to being corrected. And then you tell, I see, this is what I saw, and this is what I feel. I'm sure you'll take it very well. But if I come and budge, Willie, I saw you doing this, you've created a block. So whether it's the principal dealing with the teachers or the teachers with the students or teachers with parents or whatever, I think maybe we should be sensitive to the kind of feedback that we offer.
I think time and again in so many podcasts, people are talking about just being more human, just
True.
being more empathetic, just
Correct.
being more sensitive, just being demonstrating care. I think, and I don't know why people are talking so much about it. It's probably because they're not seeing much of it. I think they're seeing people just being more transactional, people just doing their job, people just doing their enough. I was talking to a principal the other day. He said, if I go and correct a teacher, teachers come and complain to the chairman saying, "Hamara harassment ho raha hai." So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just because there's so many factors in that just one sentence that we don't know. But my point is, I think everyone's got to be a lifelong learner.
Correct.
Everybody. And lifelong learning is a skill and an art, And I think that is something that we want to be looking at. Does any memory come to you about, a big problem that you had dealing with authority, maybe in your school or maybe in your college, and you really believed about something? Because education is so personal. It's an opinion, it's a belief, this is the way you want something done. Did you have any difference of opinion, and how did you overcome that? Or were you in a position to even overcome that? Does anything like
Not
that
with,
come to mind?
I don't think that happened with the principals that I had at St. Augustine's, neither the principals that I have had at Pushpanjali. Of course, differences of opinion would be there, but then they would be resolved by talking. And, you could just, this is what I feel, and then listen to the other person's point of view as well, and try to find a middle path.
Has the internet changed the way teachers are teaching, children are learning? What do you think every teacher should know about the power of the internet?
Well, the internet definitely has changed when teachers prepare, because there are so many ready-made lesson plans and things like that. I agree, but then those are they are not made for the they are not customized. Your children are different. Well, you do take ideas from them, but customize them to your students. The internet definitely has changed the kind of tools. Like when I taught school, I'm talking about school, when I taught school from 1987 to 1996, we only had the blackboard. We had an epidioscope where you put in a book and the book would get projected. I don't know if you remember that one.
I saw an OHP.
Right. So
Is that the same thing?
No, this is not the OHP. This is an epidioscope where you put a print book and the book would get reflected. But technology was not the kind of technology that you had today. So everything was on the way you taught and how enthusiastic and dynamic you were. Today, it's so much more easier to teach. Like sometimes I think, I say, hey, I should have been a teacher now in this era. So, I would have used these games or I would have used these apps in the class and teaching would have been so much more fun. I think it's easier to teach now with the kind of tools that you have, but equally challenging with the kind of kids that you have. So you got to remember that. And again, you got to remember that technology isn't magic. Teachers are.
Yeah, I remember in one of the conferences I heard this person saying, technology is not going to replace a teacher, but a teacher who knows to use technology well will replace a teacher who doesn't know to use technology well.
Correct. You're right.
You're
right.
That is the first thing. And the second thing he also told me was technology is an amplifier. It amplifies good teaching. It amplifies bad teaching.
Correct.
So you better be teaching well,
Right.
in that sense.
Right.
So just on a final note, I just wanted to, our last speaker asked this question to the next speaker. He doesn't know who's the next speaker. So he said, what's your most vulnerable moment and what did you learn from that? Do you think is there something?
Now you'll have to operationally define vulnerable, I think. Well, I'm reminded of one incident. We had these kind of programs for teachers, orientation programs, you could call it, every year. And there was a fresh teacher, an untrained teacher. I just completed my MSc and I was appointed as a substitute teacher at St. Augustine's. And we had this brother who came, I don't remember his name, but he came for some sessions for us. And we were to introduce ourselves. So all of us very proudly, I'm Sir so-and-so and I teach Hindi, and I'm Miss so-and-so and I teach English. And I said, I'm Miss Cynthia and I teach chemistry. And all of us introduced ourselves. And then this brother introduced himself. I'm Brother so-and-so. I teach children. He did not mention the subject. And then that hit me so hard. I said, what a big difference. So that was one moment from which I learned a lot. I don't know whether you could call it as a vulnerable moment, but surely it broke that little ego that we had. I teach this subject. We were connecting ourselves with the subject. And he taught me a very important lesson. Subject is secondary. Your students are priority. So that was one big learning moment for me. And I haven't forgotten that. This was 1987. And I haven't forgotten about that today. I always remember content is secondary.
I just feel, when I hear this story, I feel every principal, every senior teacher, every coordinator, every meeting they take, every communication that they preside over, there could be a statement that could jolt a teacher out of her stupor. And she could remember that for life.
Correct.
And that one statement could affect thousands of children. I think principals and anybody in power should understand that every time they speak, it could be a teaching moment. Oh?
That's right.
So much I learned from this conversation today. I'm so glad and happy and humbled. You've been my teacher, and even when I sit today, I'm just learning so many new things from you. So the lessons you demonstrate are just timeless and so just so current.
But this is very reciprocal, because every time I go to the Swiss tube or if I go to the Swiss website, I'm learning so much. And I don't know Sanskrit, but there is a saying in Sanskrit that says, if a teacher has to be defeated, there's no defeat sweeter than being defeated by the hands of your student. And I'm not saying this is a defeat, but I'm learning so much from you. And that's a very proud moment for me as a teacher. When I see students like you doing something exceptionally good, or there are so many more students, all these years, 36 years now as a formal teacher, and so many students doing brilliantly in their own field. And if I could I have a couple of minutes to end off with an anecdote.
Absolutely.
Okay. And this anecdote is something that I have narrated at several places. I'm not taking the name of the student. The naughtiest kid in my career. very naughty fellow who could just get about 50 to 60% marks. And he was so naughty in class, let's call him X. So one day there was some noise in the class and the teacher screamed, X, what are you doing? And the whole class said, today X is absent. He was so notorious, So even when he was absent, people thought that he was making the noise. And this kid, everybody thought, what is he going to do after class 10? He went into hotel management. He worked on the cruise. Today he runs a very successful business, a catering business. During the pandemic, when people would not dare to go to their neighbor's house if they heard there was a COVID case there, this boy has given free tiffins to families all over Vasai where there were COVID cases. And this is a boy who could not get more than 60%, right? Today he's successful. I don't bother, I don't care about the marks that he got for SSC. I feel the kind of work that he does today and the kind of example that he has created in front of us, that is success. So my message to parents and teachers is that marks, yes, chahiye marks. But if we can create good human beings, that's what a teacher is expected to do.
That's such a powerful story, and it just goes back to this idea about school mottos. I think
Service before self.
yes, service before self was our motto. I think today's schools are just lost with taglines and campaigns and punchlines. I think schools are not having their mottos as much as they should. And because kids, if I have to sum up my entire schooling at St. Augustine School, it is service before self.
And that's a wonderful tribute. The school is in its 50th year. This is the 50th year of great service to Vasai, and that's beautiful.
On that note, thank you very much. It has been an absolute joy, absolute pleasure learning so much about the work that you're doing, the lives that you've changed, and your inspirations and motivations to continue to do so.
My pleasure to be part of this podcast. And I hope I have met your expectations, whatever you were expecting, and from the podcast. So
Deep gratitude. Thank you.
thank you so much. Thank you.